Good morning. I'm Liz Jones. I'm here this morning representing the Philippine Partner Church group, and I go by the pronouns of she and her. Teach us day by day to love our neighbors as ourselves and to serve one another in love. Let love be the strong link between person and person, between nation and nation, between religion and religion. May we believe in the glory of love on earth, which is our home.
This morning's opening hymn is a little less familiar, and so after the piano intro, we will let Andrea sing it all the way through first. Now, she's singing the English words and the melody that goes with it. On our second time through, when we're all singing, I will attempt the Hungarian words and the melody that goes with that. It sounds really Hungarian, and not just because of the Hungarian words, but the music. So much so that when we were visiting in 2008 and they asked us all to sing for them, we thought, well, this is a perfect song to sing. And to our surprise, every person in that congregation knew this song by heart.
Please rise in body or in spirit to join us in singing.
Good morning, and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego, where we worship each Sunday in the South Bay, here in Hillcrest, and online.
Buenos días y bienvenidos a la primera Iglesia Unitaria Universalista de San Diego, donde adoramos cada domingo en South Bay o la Bahía Sur, en Hillcrest y en línea.
I am Dan Ratelle, and I use he and him. A special welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. Please fill out the welcome card in your order of service.
Me llamo Andrea y uso el pronombre ella. Una bienvenida muy especial a todos que están con nosotros por primera vez. Les extendemos la invitación de llenar el formulario en el orden de servicio.
Our community is a vital, diverse, multi-generational congregation without borders, with a mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values to help heal the world.
Somos una congregación compuesta de personas de distintas culturas e identidades racializadas, personas de diversas orientaciones sexuales e identidades de género, personas de varias habilidades mentales y físicas.
We are creators of community and compassion. Though we can fall short, we're committed to practicing an affirming welcome to all.
Con espíritu de reverencia reconocemos que nos juntamos esta mañana en la tierra de los Kumeyaay, quienes continúan viviendo en todo su territorio. Al emprender este viaje juntos, mantengamos en nuestros corazones y mentes el pueblo Kumeyaay.
In a spirit of reverence, we acknowledge that we gather this morning on the land of the Kumeyaay, who continue to live throughout their territories. May the light of this candle shine for our commitment to the Kumeyaay people, and to justice and equity for Indigenous people everywhere.
And now we invite you to rise once again in body or in spirit and join us in singing our church hymn, followed by the church aspiration in English and in Spanish to reflect the border region in which we live.
Well, this morning, most of our children and families are worshiping at our South Bay campus with Reverend Kristen and Tony, so I will be sharing a personal story with you this morning. I visited our church in the Philippines in 2010. At the time, I was serving this congregation as the religious educator, and our hosts asked if I would provide a religious education training for their volunteer leaders. Well, I was pleased to be asked and a little concerned about what I would share. The realities of our lives and our programs were so different from theirs, and the kinds of programs we use here are so embedded in our American culture, I couldn't see how our programs would work in their rural agricultural context. So, following a lot of thought, I decided that I would use a methodology that's based in storytelling. And all people are storytellers. We still tell stories every day. We tell well-known stories, but we also tell stories of our daily lives when we get home from school or work. So I decided that I would have to choose a story, and then I had to decide what story to use for the basis of the lesson, the text. What kind of story would they relate to? So I spent a lot of time thinking and looking at Filipino folk tales and at storybooks, and I eventually decided that much of Filipino culture is based in Christianity, and I decided I would tell a parable of Jesus. I would tell the Good Samaritan. Well, this story is of a Jewish merchant who, while traveling along a road, was robbed and beaten and left by the side of the road. Several different groups of people walked past and didn't help, including a priest. And eventually a Samaritan, a person from a group of people often thought to not be friendly to the Jews, came by, stopped, took care of the man's wounds, and made sure to get the merchant to safety. Well, I told the story, and I was met with disconcerting looks. They could not understand how someone would pass by someone lying by the side of the road who was hurt. I was told that that would be unheard of in their community. So I realized I was the person who learned a lesson that day. While I had done everything I could to plan a lesson in my head that they would resonate with, I had failed. And I'd failed because I had not done one of the most important things you have to do in partnership. That's to communicate, to ask questions, and to listen to the answers. I invite you all now to join me as we do the words and motions of our affirmation. We are Unitarian, Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands. Somos unitarios, universalistas, personas de mentes abiertas, corazones amorosos y manos que dan la bienvenida.
As Liz mentioned, many of our children and families are in South Bay today, but we will have childcare available, so if any children or youth would like to join me and our other leaders for childcare, you can meet me on the patio.
Today, we celebrate the relationships with our two partner churches, one in Transylvania and the other in the Philippines, as you've just heard. You might be wondering, how is it that we actually have partners in other countries? Well, there is some history to that, so let's start with Transylvania. I confess that when I first learned about this denomination, I assumed it was an American movement, given its presence back east, its large role in early America with a number of famous authors and political figures, including 3 presidents among its members. But while it is true that Universalism as a denomination did originate here, Unitarianism began much earlier, in the 1500s, in Transylvania. The Protestant Reformation had spawned new ideas and, sadly, also new religious conflicts. Think the Spanish Inquisition. And the educated King John Sigismund hosted a very high-level debate at which Francis David argued that there was no evidence for a Trinity. He won the debate and convinced the king, who made Europe's very first edict of toleration, declaring that each could worship according to their own conscience. That only lasted until King John's death, and then the persecutions resumed. But the seed had been sown, and the ideas of a rational faith spread to England, from which it went to the colonies, where its influence was great indeed. Not only were a number of the founders Unitarians, but it is safe to say that this liberal view of a provident God, along with the experience of religious strife from which many of them had fled, were instrumental in framing what would become the American Constitution, including the provision for the separation of church and state. Meanwhile, the Unitarians in Transylvania held on to each other as the region went through revolutions, partial occupation by the Ottoman Turks, being melded into the Austro-Hungarian Empire, World War I, after which the region was sliced from Hungary and given to Romania, World War II, an occupation by the Nazis, followed by 50 years of harsh communist rule, when much of their land and property was confiscated. In fact, when we visited the area in 2008, the congregation in Kolozsvár was celebrating the recent return of several historic gold chalices that had been seized by the government. The communist era, it must be said, was a hard time for all, but the Unitarians had it especially rough because virtually all of them were ethnic Hungarians, and the ultra-nationalist leader Ceausescu was bent on Romaniaizing Romania, going so far as bulldozing or flooding entire villages in the Hungarian areas. Even after the fall of communism, some discrimination persisted, and this was the birth of the partner church movement. It was thought that pairing Transylvanian Unitarian congregations with Western UU partners would make them a little less vulnerable. Our church was paired with the Unitarian Church of Brașov in Romania, and as connections grew, there were visits and group tours such as our 1995 Friendship Tour, when 50 of us visited Brașov as well as other cities and villages, some in homestays. I have to say that pilgrimage was quite a revelation for us. The country, its and our history, the people, even the church itself. We certainly knew that UU congregations, even in North America, varied greatly in formality and music and everything. But this was on another level, with women sitting on one side of the church, men on the other, and so many Bible readings. Not a single Mary Oliver or Bob Dylan. On a later visit, I arrived on what turned out to be Pentecost, which is a very big day for them, one of the 4 times a year when they do a full-on communion, complete with bread and grape juice. My ex-Catholic side was getting a bit nervous, but this turned out not to be about body and blood, but rather a very touching ritual that both honored their religious roots and symbolized the sharing of love, which, as the song said, is at the center of their community. Words that sound familiar, yes? In the beginning, we were the helpers, providing political and financial support, including raising starter funds to construct a much-needed auxiliary building with meeting rooms, some guest lodging, and a beautiful event space, which they named San Diego Friendship Hall in recognition. But as our partner relationship matured, we began to realize just how much we were receiving. Not just the beautiful hymn book covers, which were handmade by members of their congregation, not the image and plaque in the back of the room, but in the transformation of our notion of us. Much like discovering unknown relatives online, we began to appreciate our common ground in spite of the cultural differences. They are the outlying faith in their land as we are in ours. As a visiting minister who had studied for a year at Starr King Seminary in Berkeley and visited many American and Canadian UU congregations, observed, UUs here, she said, found Transylvanian Unitarianism way too Christian, while back home the other denominations felt that we were not Christian enough. Both congregations have also been the liberal voice on social issues. We were among the first advocating marriage equality, and when the Hungarian Unitarian Council proposed a definition of marriage precept, it was Reverend Benedek from our partner church who penned the letter in defense of love. So as we have talked and walked with our partners in their cultures, we have been opened to an awareness of just how extended our UU family really is. It has also reminded us of our relative luxury, yes, financial, but also in the ability to choose the faith that feels right for us. Because we now know there are some who have sacrificed and endured much just to keep that faith. And that is a precious gift which our ongoing partnerships have given to us. Each week in worship, we share our offering with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values. In the month of January, our generosity offerings go to organizations within our larger UU association, and this week the recipient is our Transylvanian partner church. For more than a year, that congregation held all its services and events in their social hall as they worked on a much-needed renovation of their sanctuary. It was with great relief when they finally moved back in with a rededication ceremony in September. Now they are working to ramp back up their social works programs, complete with a food kitchen, deliveries to the homebound, and help for refugees. Our offering today will help them help others. You may donate this morning here in person by credit card using the dip jars in the middle of the hall here, or by cash or check using the donation boxes. And if you'd like assistance, please raise your hand. You may also donate online at our church's website, firstuusandiego.org. We thank you for your generosity, and this morning's offering will now be gratefully received.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Justine Sullivan, one of your ministers. My pronouns are she and her. A couple of announcements before I share our reading. We have each Sunday a lay minister available to hold with you a sorrow or a worry that might be weighing on your heart. And this morning our lay minister is Chris Smith. You'll see her with the colorful scarf. Not to be confused with the colorful scarves that the jewel tones are wearing, but there she is over there. Today, Sunday, January 26th, after worship is our mid-year congregational meeting. We'll have a light lunch available for those of you staying for the meeting. Please don't eat the food if you're not going to stay for the meeting. We'll have some brief financial updates and we'll quickly review some other important business, but the main topic, as I suspect many of you know, is our sustainable future. So please plan to attend. The meeting will also be live streamed for those of you watching from home. And childcare will be provided if that's needed. I also, Stevie, I didn't ask your permission, but I just want to say we have a very special visitor here this morning, Stevie Carmody, who is one of our beloved intern ministers. Welcome. I also want to just offer a word of thanks to all of you who were present yesterday, to our amazing tech booth, for the warm welcome that you extended to the many visitors who are here for the celebration of life of Rhiannon Smith. Thank you for extending yourselves and making sure that people felt welcome. It was a sad and beautiful day, and in no small part, thanks to you. So thank you very much for that. Oh, and let us give thanks for the rain. It's a funny thing to applaud for, isn't it? Like, who's listening to that applause? Our reading is by the Reverend Richard Gilbert, What We Share. Let us celebrate the common rituals that make us kin, the poignancy of welcome and farewell, the anguish of defeat, the tender touch of those who call us friend, the exuberant joy of birth, the empty space in our hearts when a loved one dies, the ultimate loneliness that each knows. The warm embrace of comrades who welcome us to the celebration of life, the questions that persist and perplex and do not yield to our need for answers. The shining moments when the sun slants across our dim, meandering path and illuminates our way. The strange and anxious excitement of moving on to new places to call home. The fragments of frustration when our best efforts yield pitiful results. The helplessness we feel when in a small world that sometimes presents only problems. The high joy when some small victory for humanity is won and we have helped it happen. In all our moments of doubt and despair, of problem and pain, let us remember the common lot shared by our human kin. In all our times of truth and triumph, of faith and fortitude, let us celebrate what we share. We are, after all, in this together.
I am so glad that we can celebrate our Philippine partnership with you today, because several years ago, our partners in the Philippines decided that they would celebrate our partnership on the last Sunday of January every year. And so this year, two of our members, Rick Zemlin and Roger Lundbaum, are in Malingan to celebrate with them, to bring our greetings, and to let them know how much we care about them. In fact, we've been very lucky. This picture is an older picture, but a few minutes ago on the screen was a picture that was actually taken at this year's service. So I want to thank the staff for doing that and getting it in so quickly, because I just got it this morning. The UU Church of the Philippines has an interesting beginning. In 1954, some literature about Universalism found its way into the hands of Reverend Toribio Camada. He, along with members of his former congregation, founded the Universalist Church of the Philippines and requested affiliation with the Universalist Church of America. This was before merger. In 1985, they changed their name to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Philippines and applied to become a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association. In 1958, Reverend Camada was murdered. The people of the Church of the Philippines consider him a martyr for standing up to the government in support of the farmers. His daughter assumed leadership of the church for many years and only recently stepped down due to her own illness. There are 23 congregations in the UU Church of the Philippines, and our partners in Malingan are just one of them. The Malingan congregation was established in 1980. Theologically, the Church of the Philippines is heavily Universalist and leans toward progressive Christianity. They adopted our original 7 principles, and when they applied to the Philippine government as a church, they were questioned about how they could be a church if they don't mention God. And so they created an 8th principle. And their 8th principle is, there is a God, and God is love. The church has been highly supportive of women and LGBTQ individuals in the ministry, and they have also been supportive of their congregations in providing sexuality education based on the Our Whole Lives program. Our partners in Malingan are located in a rural agricultural community surrounded by rice paddies. Most of the families in the community are related to each other. The congregation meets in an open-air building for services. Their homes are mostly made of bamboo with corrugated tin roofs, and much of the activity of the community is located outdoors. Several times recently, there have been both climatic and geological issues that have impacted the community. There have been several typhoons which have flooded fields, broken branches in mango orchards, and blown roofs off homes. And recently, one of the volcanoes that make up the island of Negros erupted and covered their fields with ash. And they are currently under warning for another eruption. All of this causes major economic impacts to the community. We officially became partners with the Malingan congregation in 2007. Since that time, there have been several visits by members of our congregation to their congregation. And we've assumed, as part of our relationship, providing scholarships for elementary and high school students so that they can afford to attend school, to buy school supplies, uniforms, and for some to provide transportation so that they can get there. We're currently supporting 40 students. We exchange greetings frequently, and when I hear of a death in the congregation, I light a candle in our trencher and send a photograph to them so that they are aware that we are keeping them in our hearts. Rick Zemlin has visited several times on his own and become close to families there. In fact, he is now the godfather of the youngest son of the minister. They feel a real kinship to us and keep in frequent communication by email and Facebook Messenger. I will be posting some of their pictures on our Facebook community page so you can see some of what they sent to us. My connection with our partners at the UU Church of the Philippines changed my relationship to Unitarian Universalism. It's often easy to intellectually understand something, but not to fully grasp what that means. While I'd always known that Unitarian Universalism could be a faith that can offer something to all people, I really didn't fully grasp that until I was in the Philippines. Their joy in their faith was infectious, and I caught it.
I'm going to say a few words before the next song. Okay. You know, we here in the United States are really connected to our individualism. Would you say that that's accurate? And we've also been very proud of our reputation until about 3 days ago, I think, as a benevolent and generous nation who helps out the poor people of the world. And frankly, we Unitarian Universalists in the US have been part of that same heritage, right, of privileging at times individual rights over collective liberation. You're all going to have to hold tight, because ever since Bishop Buddy spoke truth to power, we have to be able to speak the truth to each other, right? So we, and I won't say Americans, we USers. Isn't that awfully grandiose to refer to ourselves as Americans when there's, multiple continents? So we USers have this belief in individual liberty, which is certainly important, right? But we forget sometimes about the collective. And when I first heard about the partnership program, I have to admit that I had some of that same idea, that isn't that good of us to share our wealth with the less privileged people of the world? And certainly it's good to be generous, and because the dollar is strong relative to other economies, sometimes even a little bit is really helpful and really needed. So please don't hear me suggesting that the money we send is unimportant. It's very important. But the gifts don't only go one way. We receive so much from being in relationship with these communities around the world. We have often, in the last 50 years or so, certainly the last 30 years or so, had arguments about theism versus humanism, and it can get quite heated. Well, we can count as our forebears people who died because they dared say, actually the Bible really only talks about one God, and it's not really biblical to talk about God as three. And just that, making that distinction, that theological distinction of the unity of God, got some people killed. And though that courage is part of our heritage. And in the Philippines, I was so moved by that story that Liz shared about, believing that, okay, I'm going to show that I can speak Christian. I'm going to talk about the Good Samaritan. And I've preached about the Good Samaritan many times here, and generally we worry, would I be that generous as the man who spent his own money and took the the injured person to the inn, I hope I would stop and help him. But for the people in the village that Liz visited, they just could not fathom anyone walking past an injured person. And isn't that a beautiful understanding about really belonging to each other? And so I just want to lift up that at a time when selfishness seems to be presented as wise and smart and is being rewarded and celebrated, sharing what we have with one another is a radical act. So let us commit acts of radical kindness and love and generosity, and let us refuse to be divided across physical boundaries of oceans and mountain ranges and rivers, or intellectual boundaries of understandings of what the nature of the sacred is. Those are false divisions. We are one family, one human family, and we need one another. So let us hold each other in love. Amen.
Now we invite you to rise in body or in spirit and sing with us our closing hymn, This Is My Song.
This is my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and vine. But other lands have sunlight too and lower, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, the God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine.
Our closing words are by the Reverend Doug Taylor. For all the varied reasons that have brought us out of loneliness and into community, we give thanks. For the blessings we each bestow on one another with our energy, compassion, and prayer, we give thanks. For the blessings we become to others in need, we give thanks and remember that we are not alone. Blessed be. Go in peace.